Welcome to another movie plot. Enjoy the memories and watch out for spoilers. Set in backcountry West Virginia, two college students are currently climbing the side of a cliff when Rich reaches the top first and waits on Halley, who's slipping all over the place. She calls out for him for a hand but he doesn't respond, and instead slumps over the edge lifeless, dripping blood, before being thrown off. Someone begins pulling Halley up by her rope so she cuts it loose, then once again slips off the cliff, landing right next to Rich's corpse. The killer laughs like a madman while descending through the trees around the cliff, so Halley takes off running to the nearby dirt road. She almost makes it to her car but trips on some ankle-high barbed wire, then is dragged away kicking and screaming by the ever-laughing man. The opening credits and the maniacal laugh reveal the killer to be the product of inbreeding, and suffers psychotic outbursts coupled with his above-average strength being responsible for many missing persons. Meanwhile, near the same godforsaken forest, medical student Chris is on his way to a job interview and is running late. He comes to a congestion in the road where a rude truck driver tells him there's a chemical spill up ahead, and to go comb his hair. Due to the lack of reception, he's forced to pull in at Rick's Good Value gas station to use their payphone, but finds it's busted. Don't know who Rick is, but the current owner Maynard sure has a lot of used cars. He points Chris to a map showing a detour through the mountain indicated by a red line, which Chriqui tells him just means a dirt road. On his way out, he's wished a very sinister take care, before turning onto the dirt road and speeding to his destination. Chris gets distracted a lot, when he suddenly plows into a Range Rover parked in the middle of the road. He hops out unharmed when a group of friends approach him and are all relatively nice. Their tires were punctured by barbed wire that was laid out across the road, which Jessie finds was attached to a tree and planted on purpose. The majority of the group begins to walk down the road in search of help while only Evan and Francine stay with the cars. Scott seems the friendliest of the bunch and plays a game of Name That Roadkill, which Chris gets every time, having studied on them in med school. Scott and his fiancée Carly discuss their upcoming wedding when they come across a campsite by the side of the road, but no one answers any of their call-outs and they continue on. The young couple stayed behind as they disliked the outdoors and only came to help Jessie get over a recent breakup. Evan searches for anything he can eat while Frankie gets in Chris's car and begins to snoop around, when Evan hears a sound from the forest and goes to investigate. After a few minutes, Francine notices he hasn't returned and goes searching for him herself. She first finds his sneaker on the side of the road and walks further into the forest calling out his name, then sees his severed ear and stumbles back. Suddenly, barbed wires wrapped around her head as a large man picks her up and tears into her mouth. Down the road, Scott's busy chatting away when he loses Carly. He begins to freak out when she springs out, having just been messing with him. They come to the end of the road at a giant sinkhole in the ground, where Scott gets Carly back by pretending to fall over. Just around the bend they find an isolated cabin containing a graveyard of old cars. Despite Scott's warning that deliverance is just a banjo away, they go into the cabin to search for people or a phone. They find large collections of car keys, video cameras, human teeth, and eventually a quiver of arrows and barbed wire used to obtain all of the items. Carly attempts to use the toilet but discovers a corpse in the tub and they all begin to leave horrified. Just then the homeowners come back with their spoils, so the group try to flee through the back door but it's barricaded. 3 deformed mountain men enter and begin unloading their weapons as the group is forced to hide. Chris is almost discovered when one of the men drops a cartridge near his head, but he remains hidden, before Francine's corpse is dumped in front of them and dragged away to be prepped. Jessie and Chris don't have a clear angle, unlike Carly, who silently watches them butcher their friend through the bathroom keyhole. After they've eaten their fill from Frankie, the cannibals fall asleep and the group begin to silently sneak past Sawtooth. They reach the door and get out safely, but Chris looks back and sees the mutant waking up. The survivors begin to run up a hill behind the cabin as the trio saddle up their truck and give chase. The group makes it to a clearing containing dozens of blood-soaked cars, all belonging to previous victims. They begin to search for any that might work when the mutants pull up in their truck and jump out. As they sniff around for any signs of the group, Chris attempts to lead the brothers away but is instantly shot in the leg by Sawtooth. Scott saves him by leading them away in the opposite direction and manages to avoid the initial shot. Jessie and Carly help Chris to one of the cannibals' trucks where Evan's body's being held, and they escape while the youngest mutant, Three Fingers, chases them on foot. They circle around the forest as Scott races through it and they meet him on the other side, but Sawtooth uses his bow to put 3 arrows in Scott's back, as the others watch on, wondering why he isn't moving until the third bursts through his chest. The oldest brother then fires another one, shattering the truck window as Jessie accelerates, and they escape the horror, as the trio take their kill back to the dining room table. The non-mutated trio hit a dead end in the road and have to continue on foot, staying off the road for safety and avoiding animal traps set up by their pursuers. They take a breather and find an old ranger's watchtower long since abandoned. After climbing up in hopes of finding a radio inside, they see no signs of people or roads in any direction. As night falls, Jessie aids the doctor in treating his gunshot as Carly finds a radio. They use it to call for help but don't get any response, when Chris sees the brothers walking by the foot of the watchtower carrying torches. They remain quiet and the three pass, when suddenly the radio starts responding, alerting the whole forest. Three Fingers begins to climb up, but Chris stomps his three fingers when he tries to get inside and he gives up, but destroys the radio on his way down. They decide to set the watchtower on fire and burn them out, so Carly attempts to jump to her death rather than burn. Noticing that the trees are actually pretty close, they begin to jump one at a time into the canopy, crashing through the weaker branches until slamming into one and holding on. They make their way from tree to tree while Three Fingers climbs up and Sawtooth remains on the ground with the middle brother One Eye, shooting arrows repeatedly at them from below. Chris and Jessie make it across to another tree, but an arrow startles Carly, causing her to back up. Then Three Fingers sneaks up behind her and slices through her mouth with an axe, sending her body plummeting to the ground. Knowing that he'll most likely catch up to them, Chris pulls back a tree branch while Jessie gets his attention. All of a sudden, Three Fingers drops down behind Jessie and begins taunting her with his blade, when the branch smacks him in the face, sending him flying out of the trees. The two manage to make it out of the forest and into the sinkhole, then wait in a cave behind a waterfall as the brothers walk straight past. They sleep there for the night, as Jessie has now lost all her friends and tells Chris how her breakup was the reason for them even being there in the first place. In the morning, she wakes from a bad dream and the two continue to push on. They finally find a road through a clearing, when an axe strikes the tree next to Chris and One Eye charges them. Out of nowhere, Sawtooth captures Jessie as a distracted Chris is knocked down a hill by the Cyclops. Chris survives the fall and spots a sheriff driving past on the nearby road, but before he can finish asking for his help, an arrow strikes him dead. He jumps into the police truck but can't find the keys as Sawtooth fires another arrow, just missing. Chris hides under the truck where he now sees the keys, and slips into the bushes when the mountain man searches the area. He watches as the cannibal loads up the sheriff's body into the truck, then hitches a ride by hanging onto the undercarriage as he drives back to the cabin. Meanwhile at the cabin, Jessie is tied to a bed and gagged while trying to reason with One Eye, but he just really likes killing. The arrival of Sawtooth's truck at the cabin luckily saves Jessie from being a quick meal as Chris has come to save her. Big Bro brings dinner inside and they begin to hack the sheriff up, before Sawtooth orders his younger brother to kill the girl. Just before he does it, the door lights on fire, luring One Eye to the front of the cabin where the police truck comes crashing through the wall and crushes him. Chris jumps out and throws a Molotov at Sawtooth, which he reacts to like he's Frankenstein's monster, before running him through with a pointed tail wrench. He unties one of Jessie's hands, but the mutant comes back and attacks Chris again. Just as Sawtooth's about to kill him with his axe, Jessie, having not been able to get her feet free, only her second hand, reaches Sawtooth's bow and shoots him in the back of the head with his own arrow. Having been recovering from the fall this whole time, Three Fingers comes out screaming and starts wailing on Chris with a bat. Jessie gets free and begins to help, but the mutant turns on her, kicking her across the room. Using a bike chain, Chris restrains him around the neck while Jessie hops up and swings the axe into his chest. Picking up a shotgun, they begin to back out of the room as all three of the seemingly indestructible brothers begin to rise up. When at a safe enough distance, Chris shoots the truck, blowing the cabin and brothers to smithereens. Using the cannibal's truck, they stop back at the gas station where Maynard hides inside, expecting to see the brothers. Chris limps out to the bewilderment of the old man and staggers over to the map, ripping it off the wall, and the pair drive away, hoping no one ever makes a wrong turn there again. We cut to nighttime as a deputy sheriff's investigating the burnt-out cabin by himself. He sifts through the debris and finds the previous officer decapitated, when Three Fingers comes walking up behind him, having survived the explosion, and gets one final kill. And the movie ends. So you made it. I appreciate your time. I couldn't have done it without you. Tell your mother I said thanks.